On November 17th, 2023, around midday Pacific time, Sam Altman joined a Google Meet. He didn't know what it was about. He thought it was a routine call. It wasn't. Within minutes, the most powerful person in artificial intelligence, the man on the cover of Times magazine, the man who had just testified before the US Senate, the man running the most important technology company on earth, was told he was fired. Effective immediately. No warning, no negotiation, no severance discussion. Just, you're done. And here's the part that should stop you cold. The person who called that meeting, the person who delivered the news, was Ilya Sutskever, Altman's co-founder, his chief scientist, one of his closest collaborators for nearly a decade, the man who helped build everything Sam Altman was about to lose. Now, here's what I need you to understand before we go any further. What happened over the next 96 hours wasn't just a corporate drama. It wasn't just a Silicon Valley power struggle. It was the moment the entire world got a clear look at something we had been ignoring. The most powerful AI company on the planet, the company building technology that could reshape human civilization, had no idea who was actually in charge. And for 4 days, neither did anyone else. And this is the full story. To understand what made that firing so genuinely shocking, you need to understand what OpenAI was in November 2023. Not what it is now, what it was back then. Because by that point, OpenAI wasn't just a tech company anymore. It was a phenomenon. ChatGPT has launched exactly 1 year prior, and in 12 months, it had become the fastest growing consumer product in internet history. 100 million users. Faster than Instagram, faster than TikTok, faster than anything that came before it. Sam Altman was everywhere. Senate hearings, World Economic Forum, TED Talks, magazine covers. He was the face of AI revolution. The man, more than anyone else, had taken artificial intelligence from the research lab and put it in the hands of general, ordinary people. OpenAI's valuation at that point, $80 to $90 billion. Microsoft had just invested $10 billion into it. There were product announcements almost every month, basically every month. GPT-4, plugins, the APIs, the partnerships with almost every single company on earth. And Sam Altman was at the center of all of it. So, when the board fired Altman that Friday morning, when that blog post went live, the reaction wasn't confusion. It was disbelief. Firing Sam Altman at the 2023 November felt like firing Steve Jobs from the Apple at the peak of his powers, which, by the way, did happen once. In 1985, Jobs was pushed out of the company he actually founded. The board thought it could actually run without Jobs. And 11 years later, Apple was weeks away from bankruptcy. And finally, he was brought back. Steve Jobs was brought back. And we all know how it ended. If you haven't watched it yet, I have a full video breakdown on my channel. Go watch it. I'll link it down in the description. But here's a part of the story that most people don't really understand. The board didn't fire Sam Altman because the company was failing. They fired him because of something that's much harder to explain. Something that had been building quietly for months. And to understand what it was, you need to understand who actually these 6 people were. OpenAI's board in November 2023 was one of the strangest governance structures in corporate history. Think about this for a second. OpenAI was valued at $80 billion. It had Microsoft as its biggest investor. It had hundreds of millions of users. It was, by almost any measure, one of the most consequential companies on earth. And it was controlled by 6 people. 6. Not really a typical board with investor responsibilities and shareholder accountabilities. 6 people, and some of them had no financial stake at the company at all, with the explicit power to override any commercial interest in the name of OpenAI's original mission. That mission? Ensure artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity. Not shareholders, not investors, humanity, all of it. So, who were these 6 people? Sam Altman, CEO, co-founder. You know him. Greg Brockman, president and board chair, former CTO of Stripe, one of the original builders. Ilya Sutskever, chief scientist, co-founder, one of the most respected deep learning researchers alive. A man who understood technically what OpenAI was actually building better than anyone else in that building. Adam D'Angelo, independent director, CEO of Quora, the tech outsider. Tasha Macaulay, independent director, technology entrepreneur, robotics background, another outsider. And Helen Toner, Australian AI policy researcher, director of strategy at Georgetown University Center for Security and Emerging Technology, brought onto the board specifically for her expertise in AI safety and global policy. Now, here's the dynamic that you need to understand. Altman and Brockman were the commercial engine. Build fast, launch products, grow, dominate. That's it. Sutskever, Toner, and Macaulay were the safety conscients. Slow down, be careful. The mission actually matters more than the money. D'Angelo was somewhere in the middle. For months, or maybe even longer, these 2 factions were quite actually in tension. And then in October 2023, something happened that cracked down this tension completely. Helen Toner published a paper. The paper was called Decoding Intentions, Artificial Intelligence and Costly Signals. It was an academic paper about AI safety, policy research, dry stuff on the surface. But buried deep inside was something that really made Sam Altman furious. The paper compared OpenAI to Anthropic, OpenAI's biggest safety-focused rival, founded by researchers who had left OpenAI prior in order of safety concerns. And the comparison wasn't flattering to OpenAI. The paper noted that OpenAI's launches, ChatGPT, GPT-4, had drawn criticism over copyright, labor conditions, safety jailbreaks. Meanwhile, Anthropic had delayed their Claude chatbot to do more safety work. The paper held that up as a right approach. Now remember, Helen Toner wrote this paper while she was actively on OpenAI's board. Sam Altman lost it. He contacted Toner directly and told her this paper could cause more problems, especially while the FTC was scrutinizing about their safety and researches. He thought it looked like a member, especially a board member, publicly praising a competitor while undermining her own company. This account comes primarily from Toner herself. OpenAI has never actually confirmed any details, but what happened next is on the record. And he did something that would ultimately cost him everything. He started privately lobbying other board members to remove Toner from the board, individually, one by one, making his case. The problem? When those board members compared notes, they realized Altman had been misrepresenting their views to each other, telling one person something different than what he had told the other. And that wasn't the first time they had noticed something like this. According to Helen Toner's own account given in 2024, the board had been accumulating concerns about Altman not really being candid to everyone. He had misled them about OpenAI's internal safety processes. He had withheld information they needed to do their jobs. He had, according to Toner, sometimes outright lied.
For years, Sam had made it really difficult for the board to actually do that job by, withholding information, misrepresenting things that were happening at the company, in some cases outright lying to the board.
And then, just weeks before the November firing, something arrived. 2 senior executives came to the board privately. They described a toxic internal culture, psychological manipulation, evidence that proved Altman was dishonest in ways that went beyond boardroom politics. And according to Toner, that was a tipping point. And then they decided they had to act without warning him. Because the moment Altman gets warned, he would pull every lever in his arsenal to get out of this. Every single one. So they called Google Meet and invited him to join. Friday, November 17th, around noon Pacific, Ilya Sutskever, co-founder, chief scientist, the man Altman had worked alongside for nearly a decade, told Sam Altman he was fired. At almost exactly the same moment, OpenAI published its blog post. OpenAI announces leadership transition. The official reason? Altman had not been consistently candid with his board members, which hindered OpenAI's capabilities. That was it. No specifics, no examples, no detail at all. Just, we don't trust him anymore. Greg Brockman found out the same way as everyone else. He was told he was being removed from board chair, but could stay as a president. He read the blog post, and within hours, he resigned entirely, posting a detailed account explanation of what had actually happened, making clear he was blindsided, making clear he sided with Sam Altman. Now, here's a detail that tells you everything about how this was actually handled. Microsoft, the company that had invested tens of billions of dollars into OpenAI, found out approximately 1 minute prior to the public announcement. 1 minute. Satya Nadella, CEO of Microsoft, one of the most powerful person in tech right now, finds out the company that he has just invested so much money into now has decapitated its own leader from a news alert. Not a phone call, not a heads up, a news alert. Now, if you are an investor, think about how would you actually think how the board was enacting at this point. They were so worried about the leaks, so convinced that Altman would fight back with any measure that they told nobody. Not investors, no staff, not even the partners. Just a simple blog post. Done. And for the next 96 hours, everything followed was controlled chaos. The first thing OpenAI did after firing Altman was name Mira Murati as interim CEO. Murati was the CTO. Brilliant, respected, a logical choice for continuity. She lasted about 48 hours. Not too much. Because behind the scenes, negotiations for bringing Altman back was already happening, and stalling and collapsing and restarting. Meanwhile, the staff were watching, and the same staff were not quiet. Saturday, confusion because it's just a day later. So everyone needed some time to even get into what is actually happening. Internal memos trying to explain what was actually happening without giving too many infos. COO Brad Lightcap writing to employees that firing wasn't because of a fraud, wasn't about finances, and definitely wasn't about safety. Just a breakdown of communication and trust, which feels like it made somehow more confusing than it was supposed to be. Sunday, Microsoft moved. Satya Nadella went on television. Calm, measured, devastating. He announced that Sam Altman and Greg Brockman would be joining Microsoft to lead a new AI research team. Now read that again. The most powerful AI company on planet Earth had just fired its CEO. And within 48 hours, Microsoft had offered him publicly a new job. That same day, Altman walked back into OpenAI's offices. He posted a photo on X. He was wearing a visitor badge, a guest badge, at the company he co-founded. At the company he had spent 9 years building it. He wrote, and I quote, "First and last time I will ever wear one of these." And then Monday came. And Monday is when it truly broke open. Because the board, still trying to hold their position, tried to make one more move. They named a new CEO, not Muradi, not someone inside from OpenAI, Emmett Shear. former CEO of Twitch, OpenAI's third CEO in 3 days. Shea sent a note to staff saying the fire wasn't about AI safety, that he had commissioned an independent review of the process, that he was trying to stabilize things. But by the time that note even went out, it was already too late because the employees had already decided. The open letter appeared on Monday. It was addressed to the board, and it did not mince words. Your actions have made it obvious that you are incapable of overseeing OpenAI. We are unable to work for or with people that lack competence, judgment, and care for our mission and employees. The letter demanded the entire board resign, demanded Altman and Brockman be reinstated, and then it included a line that literally changed everything that was happening so far. We, the undersigned, may choose to resign from OpenAI and join the newly announced Microsoft subsidiary run by Sam Altman and Greg Brockman. Microsoft had publicly confirmed that there were space and positions available for the OpenAI employees. All of them. So the choice for every person at OpenAI was very clear. Stay with a board that had just fired your CEO without any warning and replaced him with someone from Twitch, or move to Microsoft. The letter started circulating, and the signatures came fast. 500. By the time it was done, over 700 employees had already signed, out of approximately 770. That's more than 90% of the entire company, including Mira Murati, the interim CEO they had just appointed, including researchers, engineer, product manager, operations staff, and including, in the single most stunning reversal of entire crisis, Ilya Sutskever, the man who had voted to fire Altman, the man who had called him out on Google Meet and delivered the news that he was fired, signed the letter demanding his return, and posted on X. I deeply regret my participation in the board's action. I never intended to harm OpenAI. I love everything we built together, and I will do everything I can to reunite the company. Just sit with that for a second. The architect of the coup, publicly dismantling it 3 days after he built it. So, why did Ilya change his mind? That's the question nobody has fully answered. Was it genuine remorse? Did he genuinely underestimate the reaction? Did he really not anticipate that 700 people would be ready to walk out? Or, and this is the reading that I just keep coming back to, did he see what the board's plan actually looked like in practice and decided that it was worse than what they were trying to fix? Because here's the thing about those 96 hours that really gets lost in the drama. The board had a legitimate grievance. The concerns about Altman's honesty were real. The Toner paper incident was real. The executive reports of internal culture was real. But they had no plan. They fired a CEO of an $80 billion company on a Friday morning with a blog post. No communication strategy, no transition, no successor, and no explanation that anyone could ever understand. And within 48 hours, the entire company, even the new interim CEO, had turned their back against them. Whatever Altman might have done to erode their trust, the board did it like even faster. This is f***ed it up. And Ilya, watching this, made a calculation. The cure was worse than the disease. Worse. So he flipped. And once he flipped, it was actually over. There was nothing that the board could actually do anything at this point, because they had just lost its most credible member, the one person whose technical authority might have justified the action. Without him, there were just 4 people. 2 of them relative outsider that had no operational role, nothing, trying to hold a position that 90% of the company had rejected. By Tuesday, it was done. November 21st, 4 days after the firing, OpenAI announced it had reached an agreement in principle for Sam Altman to return as CEO. New board, Brett Taylor as chair, former co-CEO of Salesforce, seasoned executive. Exactly the kind of corporate governor the previous board was not. Larry Summers, former US Treasury Secretary. Adam D'Angelo, the one holdover, the only connection to the previous structure. Helen Toner, gone. Tasha Macaulay, gone. Ilya Sutskever, off the board, but he was chief scientist still. And Microsoft got something too from this. They were the winners in this. A non-voting observer seat on the board. In the front lines, Nadella's price for the chaos. More visibility, more oversight, without technically contouring the governance. And Sam Altman came back. And here's what I want you to notice about these terms. Altman returned as CEO but did not immediately join the board. The new structure gave him more operational freedom than he had before. The people who could challenge him were gone. The governance structure that had empowered a small group of people, safety people, that could override the commercial decisions, fundamentally weakened. Altman came back powerful than before, which really raises a question that I can't really stop thinking about. Was the board actually wrong? In May 2024, 6 months after the crisis, Helen Toner gave a detailed public account of what had actually happened. And it's worth going through carefully because the official story, Altman wasn't candid, breakdown of trust, vague communications, always felt incomplete, if you ask me. In May 2024, Toner gave her version of what was actually going on. These are her claims, not really independently verified, and Altman hasn't really publicly given her a rebuttal, but they are the most detailed account from what we had in that room. First, the OpenAI Startup Fund, a fund that invested in early-stage AI companies. Altman had presented himself to the board as having no financial interest in OpenAI, independent, clean. But according to Toner, the board found out that Altman had an effective ownership and control of the startup fund. He had never disclosed this, never. He had let them believe he had no financial stake while controlling a fund that operated in OpenAI's orbit. Second, the internal safety processes. Toner said Altman had misled the board continuously, like a lot of times. Sometimes by withholding information, sometimes by misrepresenting it, sometimes, in her own words, outright lying. Third, the two executives who came to the board before the firing, senior people inside OpenAI, describing a toxic internal culture, psychological manipulation, behavior that had crossed the boundaries quite a few times. Toner said that was the tipping point. And then there was the coup star. In the days before the firing, the OpenAI researchers had sent a letter to the board about a project called Q-Star, an AI system that reportedly could solve grade school mathematics. And that might sound modest, but in AI research, something that can go through as simple as even mathematics counts as a very big leap that could go general, much more powerful, much more. The letter reportedly warned the board that if this ever goes public, this poses a risk to humanity, and that Altman was pushing commercialization without taking safety in concern. Now, was Q-Star the sole reason that Altman was fired? Not particularly, not on its own. The independent review that commissioned after his return did really structure that it wasn't about anything one in particular, but it was one more thing. One more piece of a picture that the board had been assembling for months. A picture of a CEO who was moving fast, controlling information, managing the board rather than working with it, and doing all of this while sitting on top of the technology that some of his own researchers were calling potentially dangerous. So, were they wrong? Were the concerns legitimate? Here's what I actually think. They were right about the problem. I'll give them that. They were correct. But they were catastrophically wrong about the solution with how they acted. That was one of the most stupid decisions I've ever found out in those big leagues, those big corporates. Like, what do you mean you fired someone from a company that is worth like 80 to 90 billion dollars without an actual plan? So here's where we land. 4 days, 6 people, $90 billion on knife's edge. A CEO fired for dishonesty, but comes back stronger than ever before. A board that tried to protect its safety mission, but destroyed their own credibility in the process. 700 employees who threatened to walk and didn't have to. A chief scientist who voted to burn it down, changed his mind, lost his board seat, and eventually walked away anyways to build something new. And a company that survived all of it. Kept running, kept building, kept launching products. The independent review found governance failures on both sides. That was so obvious. It did recommend some reforms. The new board took into account for some of them. Not everything, but some of them. Microsoft got its observer seat. Altman got its company back. And OpenAI kept going faster than ever before. Which is the part of the story I generally can't resolve. Because the concerns that the board raised, the safety concern, the honesty concern about who really was in control of this tech and what was about to happen, like about the future and all, none of those concerns were really put out by Altman's return. Nothing. He just came back. But there is nothing to prove him right, or like he hasn't even addressed it, not even once. They were just, for some reason, set aside. The machine just kept running. But here's the thing about the machine that are running. They don't really stop because someone in the boardroom gets nervous, right? Why would it stop for that? They stop when something breaks. The November 2023 crisis was closest OpenAI has ever been to breaking point. And somehow, through employee revolt, through chaos, and 4 days of organizational panic, it's saved. But Geoffrey Hinton left Google the same year so he could really speak about what he was most afraid of. Ilya Sutskever, the man at the center of all of this, eventually left too. Built a lab called Safe Superintelligence. Raised billions of dollars. No products, no demos, just one goal. Solve safety problem before it's too late. And I have just broken down the video last week. I'll link it down in the description below the like button. They are not outsiders, not politicians, and not journalists. They are the people who built it. And the fact the company that they had built survived its own civil war and came out stronger than ever before, I don't know if I really like it. I'm just being honest here. I don't know how much I really like of what's actually happening on the a darker side of these things. And I'm not sure if anyone does, if any of you guys do. What I do know is this. For 96 hours in November 2023, 6 people held the future of AI and potentially future of humanity in their hands. And none of them, not even one, had all the answers. That should terrify you. Or maybe it already has. I don't know how much I built this video so far. If this is the kind of story that you think more people need to hear, share this video. Because algorithm isn't gonna push this stuff unless you do. And if you want the full story of what Ilya Sutskever did next, full breakdown, why he walked away from $7 billion and what he's quietly doing right now. That video right here. And the boardroom coup you just watched, that's only the beginning. What Altman built after walking through, busting through this door, that video is the next. Subscribe so you're there when it drops. I'm not just trying to make content here. I'm trying to make something that is genuinely worth your time, that is genuinely worth watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.